Okay, great. So I'm so glad that you joined us here today. I'm excited, just like everyone else, for today's Lunch and Learn. I'm Danielle Fisher, if you did not know, and I'm your host for today's Lunch and Learn. And our session today is under the theme of Ignite. So one of the things we want to be sure to do is make sure that we are muted. And if you have questions, Heather is perfectly fine with you raising your hand during the session if you have a question, or you can put it in the chat and I will let her know that you have posed a question in the chat. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it, and so that we can get started and hear all the goodies. So I think that at some point in our entrepreneurial journey, we've all been here where we put in time and energy and money into our marketing, but yet we still feel like we're not being seen. Because I know I'm like, yo, like, what's going on? Why is nobody responding? Right. So in today's world, it's not just about competition, it's about your visibility, right? So if your message isn't clear, we've heard this all the time. If your message isn't clear and consistent and positioned the right way, then um, sometimes we find, which I just realized the other day when I had issues with my bank, that AI is deciding whether or not people can even find you, or did they decide if your check is real or not. So that was a little disconcerting, but AI is all over the place, right? So today's conversation is just about how we fix that. So for our topic today, stop being invisible, how to leverage AI to make your marketing convert leads. We're talking about how to leverage AI in a way that actually works without you spinning your wheels, trying every new trend that's out there, because we hear it all over social media, so that you can build trust faster and attract the people that you are looking for, and attract your people. So our speaker today, Heather Pressler, is the founder and CEO of BlueHuki, a digital marketing agency focused on lead forward strategies for small businesses. And she's also a NAWBO Circle member. So she has, with a background as a scientist turned entrepreneur, very interesting. She brings a powerful mix of data, strategy, and creativity to help businesses build digital ecosystems that don't just exist, but actually drive growth. So join me, everybody, in welcoming Heather. I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, great. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and I'm honored to get to speak today for the Lunch and Learn. Let me share my screen. All right. Okay, so today the topic and the Lunch and Learn topics have had some themes so far to look at just different ways that you're approaching kind of your business. And my theme was Ignite. And so for Ignite, I don't know that there's anything else that you can really just light on fire when it comes to your business other than marketing, right? So my talk today is Ignite, so stop being invisible and how to leverage AI to make your marketing convert leads. And whether you're leveraging AI to help you with some idea generation or you're outsourcing with a marketing firm and it's your way of maybe double checking some of the work. There's a lot of different ways that you can use AI to help you do better from a marketing perspective. But we'll talk about the best practices and all of that as well. So first of all, I'll introduce myself and BlueHuki, talk about what the current crisis problem is that's happening online, and then go into some of our secrets, so how to be smart with your time and still get found, given the changes that have been happening on the internet. Some of my words of wisdom before we actually get into, okay, let's do some real world examples with AI, implementation, and then ultimately in a big bulk of this presentation will be on conversions, because it isn't just about being found, right? It's about actually being in front of the right audience and getting people, that right audience is willing to reach out because of what they found about you. So first, I'll start with myself. Hi, I'm Heather. I'm the CEO and founder of BlueHuki. I'm also grateful to be a part of the NAWBO network. I am not only a Circle member, but I also committed to this year being a lifetime member with NAWBO. I really truly believe in the mission of NAWBO. And so I do think, and because I align with the mission of NAWBO, I was like, sign me up for lifetime membership. Like this is something that I want to continue to be involved with for a very long period of time. And I really do believe in this organization. A little bit about me. So I am a scientist turned marketer, and that one gets people to scratch their heads a little bit. So, interesting facts about myself. I actually did start in marketing. So my very first job, even before this picture was taken here, was helping my dad with his engineering firm out in Seattle do marketing that looked very different in the 90s. We're talking mailing letters, but we're talking writing, in Word and trying to get these images to make a nice little newsletter for my dad. There was no email marketing. Websites were pretty little brochures that just lived on the internet, but I was a self-taught HTML web designer. I got into a small college called MIT, so there's just a little bit of pressure to be a scientist or engineer. So I went way down that path. You can see baby Heather here at MIT. I wasn't actually a baby. This was my senior year of MIT, working at actually one of the top labs in the world for what they were doing. Um, so I went down the path of becoming a scientist. I learned a lot in that journey of becoming a scientist about data, about what makes a compelling argument for changes, about experimentation, about redoing experiments, and all of those skills that I learned in science, I've actually used as a marketer. So it's a very unusual skill set to say you're a scientist turned marketer, or maybe I'm a marketer turned scientist turned marketer. But it's been a fun and interesting journey. You can see some other pictures of me here. So there was a brief interlude between being a scientist and a marketer where I also was in sales. So I graduated with my PhD at a time where it was one of the worst times to graduate as a scientist. I also had a small child. His name was Ethan. He was much smaller than even this picture. And I wanted a family-friendly career, and so I went into pharmaceutical sales. But that's ultimately what ended up leading me back to marketing. So I was one of the top salespersons for these pharmaceutical sales companies. Positive things about the industry, I learned a lot more again about being compelling in your messaging, right? It's not just about the data often. There's a lot of other reasons people make decisions about what they're going to be doing from a medical standpoint. I also learned that there was a lot more to business, to marketing, to things that have been changing. And at a time that I was one of the top ranked salespeople, I would give people advice about what our companies were doing research on and telling them. And they were like, but Heather, who's going to help me with this? And that's what ultimately led me back to becoming a marketer again, because they did not have, between me and my former business partner, we had about 400 contacts in DC area, and only one of them was happy with their marketing company. And that marketing company was located out in California. And so there was this just widely unmet need in the market for mostly customer service, like being a reputable business in this space. But then the other aspect of it was actually things that worked to grow someone's business from the internet. People were desperate for answers and solutions because they're not going to do it themselves. They are the best professional that they can be, right? So in that storyline, that was 10 years ago, guys. In July will be my 10-year anniversary as an entrepreneur, and I could not be happier. And in the time that I spent in pharmaceutical sales, I was moving jobs every year and a half or so between getting laid off in mergers and or getting bought and then management completely changing. I really didn't feel when I was working for large corporations that I had control over my future and really just being where I wanted to be. Like I just wanted to do my job well. And so I have spent a decade as an entrepreneur. This has been my longest job since graduating from grad school, and I am super happy being an entrepreneur and helping other people. And then these are my whys. So that's Marie, Ethan, and Bobby's the littlest one. He is not so that little anymore. He's about a year and a half now. Um, Ethan is a student at Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology, so he's following in my footsteps. Although I think he's got different interests than I did, which is great. So it's been great to see him kind of grow up and nurture those interests. And then something that's also a key part of my story, when I started my first business, I was actually a single mother. I had no net when I started my first business with two business partners. About 6 months after I started that business, I met my husband here, Rob, and him and I started dating. And about a year and a half after starting that first business, we got married, and I discovered the world of military spouses. My husband is active duty military. He is on his 21st year as active duty, and he will be retiring from service in December. So we'll also be going through life transitions that are unexpected. But that military connection is ultimately what led me to growing a big, healthy business. So, meet Team BlueHuki. About 80% of the people you see in this picture are military spouses themselves. I discovered pretty early on in that first agency that military spouses were the best kept secret of like having a reliable workforce that really is truly dedicated and passionate about everything that they do. Really talented individuals that are chronically underemployed. I've been doing some advocating on Capitol Hill recently where military spouses, if you don't know, have a unemployment rate of about 23%. If that was any other group in our country, we would call that a complete crisis. There isn't really much being done about that unemployment crisis. So I've been pounding around on Capitol Hill with MOAA and USAA about some tax incentives to give employers tax incentives for taking a risk and hiring that first military spouse. The idea is that once they see how amazing that person is, they'll continue to hire more military spouses and take that risk that even if they have to relocate, it was worth it bringing that person on to the company. So that's a little side passion, but a lot of these folks in this picture are military spouses, and I love employing them. As you can see, we've won a lot of awards of the year, and our team right now is at 21. So we are quickly growing, and six of those people were hired within the last month. So we are growing rapidly. So, and part of that reason is what we're about to talk about today. The problem that a lot of people are recognizing. AI is causing an online invisibility crisis that wasn't necessarily felt by like previously existing businesses. And maybe they were ignoring it. So maybe they had a marketing firm that wasn't that effective, but it's okay. Like the economy's keeping me booming. I'm busy enough. I don't have to worry about it. Well, when things start to feel shaky and things are being changed up online, all of a sudden you're like, I can't have a marketing team that just doesn't understand what's happening. So let's talk about that. ChatGPT about, a year ago now at this point started what has been for the last year to 6 months fundamentally changing how people are searching the internet. So in this particular table, what you're seeing is what are some of the things that people are searching? Are they searching Google? Are they asking ChatGPT or other learning language models? And it's interesting because I don't know that some of these were really intuitive for me. So, for example, if someone's getting a quick answer, fact or definition, they just search Google. I would have thought maybe ChatGPT would be the resource for that, but again, this is pretty dynamic, so it might be changing every day. Getting reviews, that one I would say, okay, yeah, I would thought people for reviews they'd go to Google for that. Understand why something works, and then getting step-by-step instructions. A lot of people are actually leaning on these learning language models for that. But one that is interesting is finding companies or local businesses. Google is still pretty much dominating when it has some sort of commercial or transactional component to it. And so in 2026, about 60% of searches are zero-click searches, which means you are not going to get traffic to your website when someone makes that search. They are just looking for an answer and they have no interest in visiting your website. So that means that there's a lot of traffic that's no longer visiting websites. So this crisis, the invisibility online, this is not just an issue for startups, let's be clear. So startups always have that problem, right? Where you're starting a new website, you don't have much of a presence, you don't have a brand recognition. This is actually data for websites that we have access to that we're not running a strategy in quarter three and quarter four of 2025. 83% of websites saw a decline in their traffic from search. So 83% of websites, whether they're a startup, whether they're a well-established business, if they did not have a strategy and they weren't active online, they lost traffic in the last 6 months. That's a huge number, right? That is a big shift. So let's talk about what this is. The secrets. So how to be smart with your time and get found and what is working right now. So let's talk about my secrets. Content strategies that are currently working. And I love that we have some friends on this call that also specialize in things like branding. We'll tell you what, building trust online is still one of the best ways to continue to grow your web presence. So this is joining local organizations like NAWBO, getting mentioned in media articles, winning awards, having other organizations talk about you as an organization is still a big content strategy that works. This shows Google that you are trusted and you should be a resource for these things. Stay active with local roots. So what I mean by that is the number one miss that I see from other marketing agencies on the internet is they're active on someone's blog. They're writing content, they're expanding the web presence, but there is absolutely no local anchor to that whatsoever. Meaning, most businesses, mine might be the exception. There are other businesses that are also an exception where I could serve anyone across the country in theory. Although I will tell you, even for my SEO, I do local search. But a lot of businesses, if you have a physical location, why are you going after national keywords? That makes no sense. Someone from LA is not necessarily going to come to Reston, Virginia to patronize your business. You should absolutely have local roots into any of the strategies that you're employing, especially when you have a physical location. And then answering common questions. This one's a new one. So the learning language models love to have a lot of details that are almost like secret details about your business. The problem is that there are no secret details about your business. If you don't have it publicized online, ChatGPT and those other AI help cannot see anything about your business unless you've published it. And so FAQs are a great way to provide ChatGPT with the data that it's looking for to answer people's questions and to make you the answer to that question. So that's a new one. Where you need to be active. So the other question is, of course, is not just what you need to be active on and what you need to be doing, but where. And some of this maybe won't surprise you, right? Some of these are the oldies but the goodies. So social media, still absolutely relevant. But did you know that social media posts are now indexable on Google? And what that means is that if someone Googles marketing agency near me, Washington, D.C., or marketing agency in Falls Church, if I don't have those keywords in my social media posts, I won't be seen for that. And unfortunately, in this particular case, hashtags don't count. So if you have Falls Church hashtagged, it does not count. It does not know how to index a hashtag at the moment. So having keywords in your social media posts is critical to getting people who do not follow you to see you more. And I will say that for some of our clients who have big social media presences, we saw a 700% increase in the number of non-followers that saw their posts in the last 6 months. 700%. That was not ads driven, folks. That was free. So that's a big one. Organizations, again, like NAWBO, chambers, things of that nature, your backlinks, your words, articles, still, provide that important boost to your brand online. Your website. So again, that one's not a surprising one. Everybody knows you have to be active on your website. But some of these techniques that we're going to be talking about are specific now to what's working in search and what's working on ChatGPT and LLMs. Community groups. So for those of you that don't know, there's a lot of groups, and NAWBO has them as well too on LinkedIn and social media. Grassroots word of mouth is still a very powerful way for people to see you. That may not be indexable. So like if some of these community groups are private, you're really just being shown in front of a private group of people as a option when they're looking for your services. And then last but certainly not least, email is not dead. So email is still one of the core ways of staying in front of your network and clients to getting more people to seeing you, what are you doing, what are you up to? And again, putting together a holistic strategy where you're reusing that content that you've created. Now, to execute a full marketing strategy, is a lot of work, right? This could be 15 to 30 or more hours a week that you're spending on all of these different activities, which if you're trying to DIY this and do it yourself, that is not sustainable. You would be spending more time on your marketing than maybe even sales, right? So the question is, can we use AI to save some time here? And the answer is absolutely yes. Just use it in the right ways. So let's talk about those right ways. So can we use AI to save time? And I don't know if anyone on the call has an opinion on this one, but this is a survey that was done to find out for the average person, how much time did they save per day by using AI? And what they found was about the average is about an hour, which I don't know if I was expecting more or I was expecting less. And then I reflected on my own personal experience and I said, I also might spend an extra hour a day responding to things that come from people that are written by AI. So I might be a net positive zero for me. But I was a little surprised. An hour is a good amount of time to save on a daily basis using AI. But I think that there's maybe this conception that like, oh, I could do 15 or 30 hours of work in 1 hour with AI. Not necessarily true. Okay, so some words of wisdom for me before we actually jump into some implementation examples. Um, so before we get started, best practices. So with AI in general, when you're using it, always review. Do not use unedited, unreviewed AI. You might think that you can, right? The problem is that it sneaks things into posts, it sneaks things into content, and if you don't review it closely, you might find out that you've posted something really wrong or really off-putting, and you didn't even realize it. Be authentic. So make sure that the way the content is written and how it's writing really feels like it could be you. I think the number one thing that turns off a consumer is when they realize that some of those words like delve and the world of, and they just immediately are like, ah, you got me. This is AI written content. And then they just turn off. Maybe they're not listening to your message anymore. So just making sure that it's authentic to you and your brand. And then my third piece of advice is create an avatar. This avatar should be the ideal client in your mind and understanding their pain points. That avatar can help you further gear some of this content and topics that you're talking about or you end up picking because there's millions of topics you could go with. That avatar could really help you zone in to what ultimately will be the best conversions for your business. Okay, pitfalls to avoid with some real examples and funny stories to tell you. So, pitfalls to avoid. If you don't have a clear strategy and you go straight to AI for this, you end up with more content but not better results, right? Because without a strategy, you can produce all the content in the world and you're still not making traction, right? Generic output. So it sounds like everyone else. Also, the danger here with generic output is that you just aren't convincing to the reader, right? Over automation loses human connection. So you can also use AI for like chatbots, for answering your phone calls now, all sorts of things. The problem is with over automation is that you then also maybe lose touch with your audience, where they no longer, the messaging no longer resonates with them. They don't feel like they're interacting with Heather. They feel like they're interacting with AI bot. No fact checking. Not only is it a credibility risk, but this is also in certain industries, like if you're a lawyer or medical provider, if there is wrong information on the website and it's cited, that could be a risk just ethically or legally for the business. So you have to be really careful about that. And then the last one is AI images that modify your face, have errors, look fake. You've lost credibility. I have some examples on here. One of them was this is actually a high-end membership program that used a fully generated AI image of like, I guess what they assume their membership is. And you kind of just look at this and go, ugh, is that what they think we want to see, right? This one down here is actually one where I was doing a training with my team and we were talking about how to use AI in appropriate ways. And it actually took our client and replicated him 3 times in the same image. And I was like, this is actually a great example of how not to use AI. And we laughed about this one quite considerably. The client was supposed to be in a meeting with another person. Instead, AI decided to put the client 3 times meeting with himself. And then the other one is you got to watch out for the weird stuff. So there's like in this one, it's we've got 2 arms, and then in theory, there's maybe a third arm up here. And you just go, oh, what is going on with that image, right? And I think unfortunately you can fall into the trap of thinking, well, I see it, but no one else will see it. Or maybe that error is not bad enough that I have to actually modify this. I think it's one of those things that more people notice it than you think. And so you have to be really careful about using that AI generated content. Okay, implementation. Let's get some work done today. All right. Some real examples. So before we dive right into an example of how you can implement a marketing strategy using AI, what I start with is make sure, again, we're doing the proper work to prep us. So let's say you want to have some AI written content, an email, some social media posts. You really have to have a strategy before you get there. So I've put together 3 steps. And these aren't really steps, but they're 3 levels. So, like a very basic level of like, okay, I'm trying to figure out what I should be posting about. If you just go to Google and you start typing in a keyword, if you've ever noticed it autofills for you. Well, that autofill is not just random suggestions. That is the highest volume keywords that are related to what you're trying to search for. And Google's trying to be helpful and say, hey, maybe this is what you're searching for. Well, this gives you a hat tip from Google in a very easy way of like, if I'm trying to figure out what a good keyword is that I want to use and be ranked for, that autofill gives you a lot of ideas right away. Step up from there, also a free resource that everyone has access to. And Google Ads has a keyword planner. This keyword planner has a lot of different options where you can enter potential keywords, you could enter your website, all sorts of resources that it then just pulls a list. So it pulls the list and says, okay, these are the highest volume keywords that you potentially would want to run a Google Ads campaign on. Here's how many monthly searches, here's how much competition's on it. It gives you all the details and it'll give you a big Excel spreadsheet. It could be like 500 keywords. That's a lot to sort through, but that's a step up from kind of just doing a basic autofill search. And then advanced, this would be something where a marketing agency like myself is using, although I have seen clients using our tool. We use a tool called SEMrush. SEMrush has a lot of different APIs that it's pulling from Google and processing that data in ways that maybe it's not as easy to see on the keyword planner. So, for example, this is a competitive positioning map. This competitive positioning map looks at what keywords are we ranked for? What keywords are our competitors ranked for? Where do we overlap? Where do we not overlap? Are there some strategies here that we should be implementing from our company's perspective? And if you don't have access to tools like these are ones where like if you reach out to a company like BlueHuki, usually in that intake process, we're not only talking to you about like what your goals are, what have you done in the past, but then we're going to run audits like this, looking at what are some of your competitors doing, what could you be doing better online, and giving you specific ways in which we'd improve your current strategy. Okay, practical steps in AI workflow. I have this little video running at the bottom of the screen where it is a much speed up version of me typing into ChatGPT all of this different information. But essentially, this workflow and prompt sequence that I'm going to go through is what I'm doing on the screen with ChatGPT. At the end of my presentation, I will have a QR code where you can scan the QR code to see the actual conversation with ChatGPT. You also can download a checklist for your website that we'll go over in later in the presentation as well too. So don't feel like you have to screenshot this, etc. And you can actually review how I'm having a conversation with ChatGPT. I'm pretty stringent with ChatGPT. So like this is not just one and done where I'm like, okay, we're good, that's good enough. I usually am challenging ChatGPT to get it better. And so you'll see that when you review my messages with ChatGPT. And then the other thing that you'll importantly notice too is that when you go to my website to actually view the content that I created through ChatGPT, you'll notice that it is different, meaning I have made substantial changes to that content to make sure that it is correct and it is what I actually want to say and it's not just ChatGPT generated. So those are the two things that I'd have you notice when you review later on. But prompt sequence number one, start with an idea and provide specific details. Ask for blog content that includes a local keyword. Now, ChatGPT will integrate this local keyword in any way it feels necessary. I will say our company has an actual algorithm by which how we integrate keywords into content. ChatGPT has a hard time following those instructions, but you'll get a basic level when it starts to do it when you ask it to do it. As much details as you can provide, the better content you'll get. So whether you can provide an example article, whether you can provide some background information to ChatGPT, the better information you give ChatGPT, the better the content that will come out of it. The second prompt sequence is to ask ChatGPT to generate 3 social media posts that are based on that blog with hashtags and a local keyword integrated. The third part of that sequence is now to ask for an email that takes a short teaser version of that content to encourage clicks to read the full blog. And then the last one, but as you can say, as I started with and ended with, scrutinize this. So every step of the way, I have ChatGPT download it into a Word document. I make major edits to it before it's actually published or before it's actually used. Because again, while ChatGPT can help us save time, right? It would have taken me a long time to write a 4,000 word article. It still has to be correct. You still have to spend that editing time, and that's where you should spend the rest of your time is editing it to make sure that it's good. And then, as you can see, I'm still going with a 3x speed up on that. So, it took me I would say it took me about 5-10 minutes, but if you review my conversations, 5-10 minutes initially, but then I kept going back and forth to get better revisions from ChatGPT. Okay, so let's say you're running the right strategy and you are running it online. This is data from websites that were working with a BlueHuki strategy in quarter 3 and quarter 4 of 2025. So if you remember, our first stat was 83% of websites that didn't have a strategy were in a decline. 86% of the websites that were working with us saw an increase in traffic from search. That is a huge swing. That is literally the opposite side of a coin, right? And what that tells you is that Not that there's just a danger in that shift that's happening on the internet, but there's also an opportunity, which is to say, because there's a lot of shakeup on the internet, as an existing brand, you could be winning big, right? You could be stealing that market share from a lot of your competitors that they are not taking advantage of. Now, the next part of this is not just traffic, though, right? So what that we've gotten traffic to your website? That actually has to convert into sales. So how do we then convert that traffic into sales from the website? All right, so the next one, conversions. So improvements that sell. This is actually going to be a good amount of time on the presentation as well, too, because I do really think it's important for people to understand what leads to people ultimately making a decision to reach out. So this is just an example of conversion, so of a conversion funnel. This is not necessarily based on any real data, although this was produced with data. If you have 100 users land on a web page, let's say because it's slow loading speed, 50 users drop. I don't know that 50 users drop because of slow loading speed. This is probably like there are also bots in this number. Bots are a big amount of traffic that come to websites. So, put maybe 25 of those are bots, and the other 25, maybe they just weren't patient enough for the loading speed. If you have unclear navigation or someone hits the page and they just don't get the right trust signals, maybe another 25 users drop. Text heavy content, maybe it's hard to navigate through the content to ultimately get to the answer that they're hoping for, or they don't see the answer that they're hoping for. Another 10 users drop. Maybe navigation's confusing, buttons are confusing, the call to action is confusing, another 10 users drop. So for every 100 users that land on a website, only five might convert. And actually, I would argue that five is probably a pretty high number. I think the average conversion rate on a website today is about 1%. So, of 100 users, you might get about one to five of them actually converting into becoming a lead. Um, so how do we improve that? Because if we could improve that, that would be a huge win, even if we're not increasing the traffic to the website, right? So the website checklist, which again, at the end of the presentation, there'll be a QR code that you can get the website checklist we'll run through. These are things that you can do on your website today that could increase your conversions. So clarity, visibility, trust, an offer, and action are the five categories that we're breaking into some of these. I'm gonna go through them one by one. So under clarity, and some of these, like you can get very deep. I tried to do just very surface level ones, but for clarity, does my homepage clearly state who I help and what I help them achieve? Is my messaging written for clients, not for peers or industry insiders, especially if you're in a highly technical industry? A first-time visitor can understand my value within 5 seconds. Is it that quick? Is it that clear? Now, these might be dramatic, but it gives you an idea for, am I even close to hitting these metrics with my website? Visibility. My website content reflects real search intent and local geographies. That, like I said, when I do website audits, is the number one miss I see. I'm like, I love that I see all of your services. However, none of this is tied back into a local geography. You are invisible on a local level. My expertise is clearly defined and not overly broad. So a lot of folks are like, everybody's my customer, right? Well, that can make it hard for the ideal customer to feel you're really speaking to them. My content answers common questions that users may be asking. This one again is an LLM ChatGPT newbie. But is my content answering the questions that ChatGPT, when they go to ChatGPT and say, ChatGPT, I need your help, cut down on the noise, tell me who I should go with? ChatGPT has all of those answers from your website that it can scrape and pull in to making you one of the recommendations. And as you can see, I've got some Hawaii themed here. Like to be at the beach, that'd be great. Trust. My site includes proof. So, proof like testimonials, results, case studies, awards. Is there something there that tells the user that they can trust me? My positioning demonstrates confidence and authority. My brand is consistent and professional across all pages. Something I would throw into the brand category that I really am pushing hard with my clients is please get new photography. Please get new videography. We need real people on your website featured because that is the number one trust signal that feels off in the age of AI. When everything is AI generated, when everything is stock photos, someone wants to know that they're speaking to Heather and not AI Heather. Um, Offer. Every page has one clear call to action. Visitors are guided towards a specific next step, and my offers are easy to understand and act on. Sometimes it's really tempting to have multiple calls to action on a website, but again, anything that causes confusion about what the person should do next can ultimately lead to them not converting because they're not sure which way they should reach out to you. Action. My content is persuasive and it's designed to guide decisions, not just provide information. My messaging focuses on problems and outcomes. My content builds confidence before that first conversation. So, when you get really deeper into action too and your ideal customer, there should be content on your website that only your ideal customer is interested in. That doesn't mean that's the only content you have on your website, but that means that when the ideal client is searching for that answer, you have answered that answer quickly and they go, "You are the resource I want to reach out to because you know about military pensions and divorce, or you know about property settlement agreements and high net worth, or you know about offshore banking accounts, or you know about cryptocurrency." It makes it very specific that if that's a problem that your avatar is having right now, they are 100% confident when they're reaching out that you are the right person to talk to because they found it on your website. And then ultimately, those 5 steps equal conversions. So a reminder here is that visibility creates opportunity, right? So we've gotten someone to your website, we've gotten traffic to your website. Clarity converts it. So when they're like, "Yep, this is the person I want to reach out to." And then intentional strategy scales it. That means that when you have found that right mix, you can then continue to scale and bring more of those ideal customers to your business. All right, right strategy pays dividends. So, going back to some of the stats I presented before, besides just the impressions, clicks, traffic to the website, we saw a 5x improvement in client performance in the last 6 months of 2025. I'm about to pull the data for the first 3 months of 2026, and I will tell you that just based on the reporting I've seen come through um, our system, it is looking really good for our clients. I don't know what it's looking like for the other set of data I have access to, but I'm about to find that out. I'm hoping that it's not terrible for everybody. My hope here is not to just completely dominate the market. I do want other businesses to still be winning on the internet. One of the things I will say is that I had a call today with an existing business who switched their strategy and website over just 2 months ago with us. And for the first time in years, they got above their 500 new clients per month onboarded, and they've never had that before. And we did just we got them off of a proprietary platform. We merged 2 websites together that would have more power as one website than two. And then we were running ad strategies that actually work a heck of a lot better than the ad strategies the previous company was doing. So between being with the previous company, they had 400-ish new client onboards. In just 2 months, they far exceeded that number. So we're talking like 100 to 150 more new incoming clients. And that also, by the way, just to toot my own horn, was when they lost both of their front desks. So you know that that was chaos. You know that they had opportunities that they lost out there. So again, these strategies of just being very intentional about what you're doing and improving your brand, improving your website, improving your ad strategies, improving your marketing strategies can pay big dividends, even for existing businesses that have existing marketing firms. Um, so one of the things I'll have in this downloadable is a 7-day Ignite action plan. So this 7-day Ignite action plan is, but it's only for you to choose one. Try not to take on too much if you're doing this by yourself. So choose one, create your new AI marketing workflow, rewrite your homepage headline for clarity, define one primary call to action on your website, add a testimonial or a proof point to your website or your marketing, and simplify your messaging to focus on outcomes. So these are just some examples of ways in which you can take what we've talked about today in the presentation and implement something new for your business. All right, so there's this famous QR code. Go ahead and take a screenshot of that. On this QR code, you will see the example prompt, the website checklist, and you can schedule a quick connect if you're interested in connecting with me. You do not have to be interested in marketing to connect with me. I am big on networking, getting to know other people, Heck, we could even be talking about working together in some capacity, maybe collaborating on projects, things of that nature. So please feel free to schedule a quick connect, even if it has nothing to do with marketing whatsoever. But yeah, I would love to connect with people, and I hope you enjoyed my talk. And I'm slightly under time today, so I can
Um,
answer any questions that you might have.
yeah, we didn't get any questions in the chat, but maybe you all have um, questions now. If you do, please just come off mute.
And then I also dropped my LinkedIn. If we are not connected on LinkedIn, that we can link that we can
Oh,
connect.
thank you.
It looks like Trish, your hand went up first.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure you called on me first. So I do have a question. And
Please.
since I'm no longer driving, let me just also turn on my camera so you can see me and pay the puppy tax real quick.
Uh, she looks great.
So thank you.
She's so
So here's my
cute.
question. I was already kind of because I've had previous conversations with you and with Jen, I was already starting to accrue photos of real people, real clients with their permission. I even have dog photos on my LinkedIn and other major marketing sites because we are a dog friendly office. Um, but I'm
Dogs are
wondering
very
about in
popular on social
terms
media.
of when I first started in business, blogging was the thing everybody had to do. But in my industry, that typically means using pre-compliance approved generated content that I don't write. Given what you're saying, in order to appeal and be like, show I'm a real person, should I start? Do you think that people should be shifting from that to more personally written content? Because now you've got me thinking about, do I need to include a section where it's clear that some posts, at appropriate intervals are strictly personal opinion pieces or something like that?
Yeah. So, first of all, great question. And we've actually had a lot of experience in working with industries that have pretty robust compliance processes. So, like for example, we run SEO strategies for a large national bank at the moment. But we've also worked with financial advisors and things of that nature. I am, and you'll find this about me. I'm someone that loves to just knock down these barriers. Like I'm like, tell me what your barrier is, and let's find a way to just push past it, knock it down, et cetera. And so when compliance is involved, so typically what our team will do is we'll be planning a month in advance to get everything over to compliance, to have them take a look, review it, have any objections or changes, and then, get it out the door with compliance's stamp of approval, depending on what your, compliance process is. And so we've actually been able to do unique content for financial services in the industry doing that. I will also say too, I love that you bring it up because there is actually a website company. I haven't encountered them recently, so I don't know if they still do it, but there are website companies that are like, oh, you can use our library of content on your website, but we still own it. Well, except that they allow hundreds, if not thousands, of other people to use that exact same content. And Google still has a policy by which they penalize when there's duplicate content on the internet. And so that content is basically worth nothing. It's only worth it if, like, a current client is going to your website and they're looking for that resource. It has no search value. It won't bring you new clients. Because, Google wants a good user experience. And if I went to Google and I search for
Mhm.
something, and if you could imagine, every single result for 20 results is the exact same article, I would be like, oh, screw this. I'm done with Google. Like, I'm not using them anymore. And
Yep.
so over the years they've developed these systems in place. And so that is true. That can be true of other content as well too. So like if you're using AI content that doesn't have enough information, believe it or not, that AI might be generating that content for other people too, and it could be close enough or generic enough that it also might get filtered into that copied content bucket as well too. So that's in general, yes, unique content is really
Okay.
important. Um, and it's a part of that strategy. But that's not to say you can't use AI content, and that's not to say that AI content won't rank. It will. Um, but at least our company has taken the policy of not putting AI written content on websites just because There could be a time frame that Google comes back and is able to detect all the AI written content and then just knocks it off the internet.
Hmm.
Google has done that for different, like what you call either gray or black hat strategies on the internet, which are ones that are like they're sort of not, above bar, or they're really not above bar, like stuffing links and websites and things like that. Google has always
Hmm.
tried to find, what are the strategies that people are using, and let's make sure that that's not what's actually going into ranking factors.
Okay, so original could be quite good for me.
You're welcome, Don.
Yeah. So original and personal. Okay, thank you. I appreciate you confirming that because I was just like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, and again, thinking about your avatar, right? Like what does your avatar care about? What are unique questions that they're asking that's the person that you have the answer for?
Hmm.
That's really important in that content strategy as well, too.
Yeah, the avatar I have to think about because to be honest, I shamelessly use the office dogs for avatars most of the time. We all do. Sometimes we're in the pictures with the office dogs, but they're just so cute. So,
So I tell people absolutely use things that go viral. So like dogs are one of them. Like dogs are typically one of the most popular posts on social media. Awards, when you and your company win awards, your face, things about you, those are always the most popular things that people are putting on their social media. And then there's some industry specific ones. So like for dermatologists, I'm like, if you can get me a pimple popper video just once a month, we're good. Like you will get a lot of
yeah,
engagement. And again, they'll see your other content, right? But that one viral piece helps increase the number of
yeah.
people that are seeing your other posts too.
Thank
And
you. I really
cute
appreciate that
babies,
feedback.
cute
Yes.
kids, anything like that the algorithm loves.
Hey, Heather, two quick questions.
Please go ahead, Jen.
And by the way, great presentation. Thank you for taking the time to share with us today. One would be, I find I am using Perplexity and Claude. Do you have thoughts on which, and partly because I'm protesting ChatGPT, do you have thoughts on like which platforms you like the most? And, your thoughts on that? Because I feel like they do different things.
They do. So our team actually uses all of them. Some team members prefer ChatGPT, some team members prefer Gemini. Some team members are using Perplexity. Claude is an interesting one because we've been playing around with Claude as well. And we had, and actually you would be really interested in this one in particular. We had an onboarding meeting with a client where we're taking all the basics, right? So like, what are your main services? What's your geographies? All the, and it's a lot of information. And we took the transcript, sent it over to Claude, said, Claude, make a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet was fantastic. I mean, it was like
Yes. Yeah.
multiple tabs, everything laid out nice and neat. And I was like, wow, Claude is hired. And that was really just taking notes that from a meeting and getting it in an organized fashion that looks really nice and is easy for our team to read and process. So yeah, at least from our perspective, like the written ones, again, we're mostly using kind of like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and then Claude is really great with data. Like if you want something
Hmm.
taken from words and then put into data format, yeah, really great.
And then I guess a follow-up question, and I think this is still being figured out, but going back to your point about AI generated content, I think, and I think there might be one new case law, I'm not sure, or however you say that. I think there might be some case law around if you put something in AI and then AI creates something for you, who really owns it from a copyright standpoint or even from a patent standpoint? Have you heard anything or how does that show up? Because I've heard from at least one attorney that depending on which level of software you're using, like enterprise wide, that that can be protected and considered patentable content or things you can copyright. But I wouldn't believe that unless I actually saw it. And to your point, it might change. But any perspectives on that? Because I think going back to Trisha's point, original content is always the best. However, if you're putting in like some of your own stuff, there's risk to that from a protection standpoint, especially if it's ChatGPT. Like if you uploaded Like I've written a couple of books. If I upload a book, that is now available for ChatGPT to use. But thoughts on
Yeah.
like which levels might help you stay more protected, or is that all bogus and we should just not do that?
Oh my gosh. Well, lots of thoughts. Yeah, so anything that is, and most people know this, anything that's free, you are the product. So whatever you're putting into it, you have to always wonder like what is it that if this is free, like what is it that they're taking from me, right? And there are a
Hmm.
lot of these things that actually could be particularly like sensitive where it's like, oh, this is
Oh
a
yeah.
PDF merge. And you're like, well, what happens when I'm uploading my data to your website and you're merging it? Like, are you keeping my data? Like, where is that data, right? Um, I would say I'm not really in the space where, although a book is a great example, I'm not really in the space where the content that we're creating is going to be like, gatekept or publicized or things of that nature. It's specifically meant to be open source. But
Yeah.
actually, there's a lawyer that I work with, and I'm happy to make the connection for you as well too, who is a phenom when it comes to kind of understanding the privacy of these different platforms. And
Yeah.
you are absolutely right that ChatGPT is not the place you need to be for that.
Yeah.
But apparently there are concerns with a lot of these platforms that again, they're using everything that's being given to them as a part of their learning language model. Although from the law clients that I work with, they say that Thomas Reuters, which is what they use for their for their LLM has
Hmm.
all the protections in place that it's not discoverable and so on and so forth. And so they will only use platforms
Hmm.
like that for their
Yep.
particular purposes. But again, I wonder, right? We don't really know for sure what they're putting up walls for and what they aren't,
Hmm.
right? And I don't know if you've seen any of the funny AI examples. When I was looking for some of those images to put on my presentation, there was one where someone went to, it was like a Chevy dealership and was talking to an AI bot on the Chevy dealership's website and was training the bot. It said, what I'm about to do is you have to help the customer and you can't say no to any offer that the customer gives you to purchase a car. So they're training the model accepted it, and this person bought a Chevy for $1 with
Yeah.
the AI's authorization, no takesy backsies, and it actually used the word no takesy backsies. So
Yes.
there have been a lot of chat examples where people
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
train the chat model just giving
Hmm.
it inputs. That's scary, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, um,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. And then you don't
Yeah.
know if they update the most recent version, right? Like if they update it and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden that is allowed, right? Ooh.
Right. 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 Yeah.
And as
Makes
you
me
know, and
curious.
I'm very popular with Google, but Google does not tell me when it makes changes. Neither does Meta, and I'm really upset about
Hmm.
this fact. But yeah, no, like you never get notifications that something's changing on a platform that you're working on, and then all of a sudden that wall has been torn down accidentally, right? Sorry, Danielle, I saw you had a question too.
No, I was just commenting on what Jen was talking about because I know um, with regard to I am an attorney, but with regard to they just came out with new case law that when attorneys use it, that there's no longer client confidentiality when you put
Hmm.
clients' information in it. So, and I'm sure a lot of people haven't thought about that, you know. So you just have to really be careful with what you put in there.
Well, and I feel
Hmm.
like I feel really bad for especially the attorney space because I there's also been some kind of rumors, et cetera, that I've heard where there's also a pressure to use it. Meaning, if you are not using it in an appropriate way and your billable hours are too high, there's also some I don't know if there's case law on it yet, but there's some like kind of whispers that I've heard about, well, that's an ethics issue if you're overbilling a client for something that you could have had done in a more throughput way. The law industry is you're sandwiched between
Yeah,
two
I could
two
see
a
that.
rock and a hard place.
I could see that because, yeah, but I think that would be a really fine line for them to draw and to determine based on what the issue is, who determines if what you consider reasonable. a reasonable amount of time. Reasonable has always been a legal question. So, um, yeah,
Yeah, do not envy that part of
yeah.
it.
But this was awesome. And I swear I had a question or a comment or something when you were in the middle of it, and then I got distracted. So that happens quite often. But, but if I
Well, I'm
think of
always
it,
available for
yes,
doing networking. If you remember it in 2 seconds, you can always
yeah,
email me, text me.
I will. We really appreciate you taking the time out today to share with us and especially sharing the additional information that you share with us to look at after. Definitely going to take a look at that. And I just want to make sure that everybody has gotten their tickets for the We Awards luncheon. So if you haven't, please hurry because seats are running out and it's going to be amazing. So
Thank you,
looking
everybody,
forward to
for
seeing.
attending today.
Yes, and I look forward to
Thank
seeing all of you
you.
there.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank
All of
you
that was
so much,
great.
Heather.
Have a good rest of your
Appreciate it.
day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.